Hey, welcome to Bowls on Beers, where this week we're not drinking to drown our sorrows. We're drinking to celebrate a win. And that, my fellow UB fans, is the difference between an enthusiast and a full out alcoholic. So uh, we're ready to have fun this week a little bit and get ready for next week. Now, a lot of people accused us of jumping on after the win. I saw that in the game thread. I just want to say, even before Adam Mitchelson hit that game-winning field goal and put those points on the board that won the game, I think all of us can agree kind of we were very happy with where things went. Some of the highlights I saw even before the comeback was successful was you saw a lot of energy on the defense, a lot of swarming to the ball. You saw players really emotional and into the game. And we saw offensive coaching, which I think throughout the game gave Tyree Jackson a better chance of success. And I think it helped with the deep balls. Even though they didn't connect, I think they were a lot closer because of all the short passes he was getting. And welcome to Thing 4 here. She's on with me this week. We have the same crew. We have Kevin and Robbie and Matt. And hopefully Kevin and Robbie will do a better job jumping on and not letting us old guys dominate the conversation. And actually qualifying Matt as an old guy.
I was just gonna say.
I think I held my own last time pretty well.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm a month into being 26. I'm not sure how we go with.
That's old.
Matt, there's got to be two old guys and two young guys, and I'm sorry. I'm 40 in a few months, so
there's always two Sith. I understand. That's about 50% of what I know about Star Wars, so I'm glad that it was right.
That's
well, it was very very well played. For what you know, you made a lot of use out of it.
You didn't take out a day and just watch all of it.
I could, but then I wouldn't get paid.
Yeah. Well, a big piece of news before we really get into the Army game was per Mark Gone at the Buffalo News. Brandon Berry has decided to leave the football team. From what I could tell, it's as amicable a divorce as a player can have from his football team. It wasn't a Shannon Evans situation where there was bad tweets flying and people got mom and dad fighting with each other. Apparently, Brandon Berry, who came in last year and was very good at the middle linebacker when Jarrett Franklin was injured. I don't know if he just wasn't happy being backup to Franklin this year or if there's something else going on. But he had played 40% of the snaps. And, in my opinion, this is a pretty big loss. But just because he's so athletic, even though he wasn't starting, you hate to lose a guy like that. But then again, he didn't play against Army, and we won that game. So it's obviously not a fatal loss to our defense. I think we saw some of the best active defense we've seen all year. And I'm not attributing that to Berry not being on the field. I just think it shows we don't need him on the field to have that. So, hey, questions for any taker. Does this really hurt the defense, or is this just kind of something that, they're going to roll with and it's going to go fine? So I'll leave that to anyone to take it.
I think my gut instinct is to not be terribly concerned, but I think that's dangerous because we do need the depth, especially no matter what, as a mid-major who can't recruit like Toledo or Western Michigan, we need the depth. The reasons that I'm not feeling it so big is, as I said last week, I hadn't really noticed too much from the linebackers in the first two games. I did notice a lot. Everything that Tim talked about, the highlights from Army, I absolutely agree with. It felt like a point-by-point rebuttal of my rant last week. That said, linebackers were huge in the Army game. None of them were Berry, of course. My gut reaction wants to say it's not too dangerous, but I realize the depth is very, very important. If Franklin goes down again, if Hodge gets tweaked, we're going to wish we had a guy. Berry was good at those big impact plays, big tackles for a loss, big plays at big moments. I don't know if UB just hasn't had the chance to make those plays this year. For all the things that were checked off, I didn't see tons of those other than the one fumble against Army. That fits in with I'm not sure what changed about the front seven this year at all, other than Hodge for Gilbo, basically, and Franklin back in for Berry. But he was someone who could bring those big plays, and if we need them later, I'm going to think of, that's where they came from last year, and that guy's not on the team anymore. So my gut reaction is to say I don't feel like I missed too much because they did perform well against Army, and he hasn't played a lot this season. But the depth is important. If I find myself in a tight game against Miami wishing for a forced fumble or a fourth down stop, and it doesn't happen, if a gap is open or a linebacker makes a tackle and falls backwards, I'm going to wish that it was Barry making that tackle or hitting that gap.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't know, Robbie or Kevin, you guys have anything to add to that?
I'm pretty much the same with Matt. I really liked Barry, and I think it's a small loss. We will miss him if somebody gets injured, but with the way the season's gone, I don't think we're going to miss him too much.
Yeah, and it's still only one player. The defense is more of an all-together unit, so yes, it hurts to lose a good player, but it's still only one, and the defense is still one unit.
Yeah. Oh, baby has been going in and out of mute today. I do want to say the one thing I talked about last week was if I was the defensive mastermind running UB's defense, I would have thought about putting Barry in instead of Boise Ross on the corner. And I was going to mention this anyways, even before we heard that Barry's leaving the team. I was going to mention Boise Ross kind of fed me some crow because he was in perfect position for that play, which ended up being UB's, I think, first turnover of the year. Correct me if I'm wrong, when we recovered that fumble. He didn't cause the fumble per se, but he was there to make sure that the running back who should have got the ball had no chance of recovering it. He stuck him really well. In fact, he stuck him so well I was almost sure a flag was going to come out for head-to-head or something else that they try to pin on nice tackles now. Targeting. Well, it's been 2 quarters since they called it on him. So
almost got benched again.
But no, he did come up big, and even if the pitch had been successful, obviously, I think he would have been there for the tackle. So that's the news. Barry is off the team. It is to me somewhat concerning the number of players that have left or are leaving since spring last year. Someone, I don't know if it was one of you guys or someone in one of the comment sections, pointed out a lot of this coincided with Solomon Jackson passing away.
Someone said in the comments, and then I brought it up on a show a couple weeks ago because it had come up. The TV announcers were talking about it during the Albany game. They said that Leipold had mentioned it in the run-up, that it had been something they had been dealing with, that there were a lot of guys who, some of them were fringe players, some of them were not, who just decided that they didn't want to risk it. Not quite the words they used, maybe not the right words, but that's what so I brought it up here, and I know that someone else brought it up in the comments, someone outside of the editor group.
I hadn't heard the risk it part. I just assumed that, it's sometimes when something like that happens to you or someone who you care about, you just don't want to be there anymore.
Yeah, then that might. I guess I shouldn't have said. I definitely shouldn't have said risk it. They said wanted to spend more time with their family.
Yeah,
the phrase I remember is knew what was important to them. That's the phrase I want to use. So
I wouldn't have been surprised if that's the reason Colin Lisa went home. Matt Siebert seems to be doing very well now. So it's unfortunate that's one of the reasons why people would have to leave a program, but it is what it is.
I think if people are leaving if people have to be leaving a program, that's the best. Losing the player, they're not leaving the program because it's being terribly managed. I think it's just a normal response people would have. If something terrible happens to you, a lot of people move to a new place, try to reset their life, and that's normal. But anyways, I did not mean to go down that way, so I apologize for being a downer, because this is happy time.
It's very true.
This is happy time. We beat Army, a team that was previously undefeated, and a team that only one of our Bull Run editors was smart enough to pick losing. Everyone else, I think, picked Army to win. I'm not sure who that brilliant guy was that is now tied amongst – oh, no, I'm not tied. I'm second amongst the Bull Run editors, but rising like a rocket.
Hey, I got my point, and that's all I care. That's all I care about.
I'm just saying, Mitchison hits that field goal. I think I get – no, I don't get 2 points. No, I don't get 3 points. I got 2 points.
Robbie's like Rick Moranis in Little Giants. We got a
I
yard.
never saw the movie.
We got a yard. Sorry, Robbie.
You
Yeah,
called me out the week before at Nevada, like all the editors except for Robbie has a point. I'm like, well, thanks.
I can't trash talk like Dave could, so I like have to build up the editor competition a little bit more.
I'm just not good at predicting wins.
Well, I mean, look, I'm going to finish so far down the heap. I got to beat the editors. That's all I got to hang on to.
When I did my simulation post last year, those beat me in Brewpeg.
They did.
I'm pretty sure they did.
We should start
Well, you
those
know-
again.
I
we
gotta
don't-
wait for. I'm waiting it. It's not available until October 1st, so after this weekend.
What's not of it? Oh, the prediction machine.
Simulator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year the average pick did really well, and this past week was the first time that the average pick did well because it picked UB for 23 points
Not bad.
or 22. No, 23. It picked UB for 23 points. And last year, Gone was way up at the top, and he is not this year. We'll see what happens in MAC play.
Gone surprised me last year.
Yeah.
All right. So back to Army. Like Matt said, what we saw kind of she's teething everyone. What we saw was point by point Matt's concerns about the team getting addressed. So of those 3 big points I said, the energy on the sidelines, the swarming to the ball, the offensive play calling. Which one do you think was the most important? This is going to be an awful.
Robbie, you go.
I heard something about offensive play calling. I was too busy laughing at the baby.
Which of the 3 of energy on the sideline, a swarming active defense, or offensive play calling is most critical for UB to have a successful season, or something else that you think you saw in Army that we didn't see before?
I'm torn between energy and offensive play calling. I'm going to go with offensive play calling. I saw a lot of really good things this time around, despite a few bad plays, but it was the best offensive performance I thought in terms of play calling that we've seen since Lance Leipold came to Buffalo. Definitely saw a nice combination between running and the passing game, and unlike Nevada, we saw a lot of short and intermediate routes, which was just what we needed because it spread the field for Tyree to get a couple deep passes in, and unfortunately, those didn't get caught. There's like 3 of those that could have been touchdowns, but if any of those had been caught, we would have dominated that game, and everyone would be even happier. So the prospects are looking pretty good in that regard. And I think that's going to be, if we keep continuing to do that, that's going to be the most important thing.
Kevin, what do you think?
I'm going with energy was the biggest thing. I think energy helps with the other 2 things. Like, yeah, play calling is important, but the execution was there more. I mean, they ran the read option, but they just played so much more confidently and stuff, and I think it all starts with the energy. This was the first time all season I saw people on the sidelines jumping up and down, getting excited. All I think because they had the energy that they were just bringing from everyone. Nobody seemed down. Everyone seemed up. It just seemed like the first time I've seen that energy. And I think it leads to the other 2 things. So, I mean, the more they're excited, the more they're going to play free, less nervous. Energy is where it all starts, getting hyped up, getting ready, and you can perform. I mean, I saw confidence in Jackson on those long balls. Yeah, they weren't caught. But compared those long balls from Nevada, he just looked more confident. He felt more confident. And I think it's because of the energy on the sideline and the support he was getting from everyone.
Yeah, I was in between the swarming defense and the offensive play calling, in part because I've been so upset about the offensive play calling until this point. But since Robbie talked about that, and you talked about energy, you could convince me that the energy was just as important. I do want to talk about the defense. Like Tim said at the outset, now we've said in some of our posts, I honestly haven't read all the comments on the site this week. I just haven't. I've been writing a grant proposal at work, and that takes all of my time, and I can't take a break or else I lose my train of thought. But defense storming the ball, we talked about this during the game. We're very happy with where we are. Even if Army hits that field goal, just the fact to get back to 2020 was great. And yeah, the offense scored 14 points in the last quarter. Hell, they scored 14 points after failing a fourth down conversion at midfield in the fourth quarter. But the defense was on the field for 18 minutes in the first half. And I wrote it on Twitter, I wrote somewhere that my recap changed 5 times over the course of the last 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. But the early stage of the recap had, the defense was amazing until they just couldn't hold it anymore. They were just too worn out. Because I fully expected that to happen, and I expected that to happen without us being upset at all that it did happen, at least not at the defense. And it never happened. The defense never wore out. I think the guys were beat up and, really took a punishment from Army, but they held. I noticed it at the time, and I really thought about it on replay when I heard it in the postgame conference, but UB in the second half with their adjustments did such a tremendous job of taking away the middle of the field, the between the tackles running, which is interesting because when I think of the danger of the triple option attack, it comes getting to the outside and having multiple lanes open that can change which lane you're attacking very quickly with a quick pitch. But it was in taking away the middle of the field and the between the tackles running where UB really succeeded because it took away Army's bread and butter plays that they had been using to attack the B gap on both sides, the B gap especially with a slight option for the C gap, to get those 2 and 3 yards when they needed 4th and 1 and 3rd and 1. And in the first half and in times in the third quarter, you saw UB get to 3rd or 4th and short, and they'd give up, sometimes they give up 3 yards, sometimes they give up 19, 23, 30 yards. And it just stiffened in the second half. And I kept waiting and waiting for the defense just to give out, for the energy to be gone, for 25 minutes, at one point, 25 to 18 minutes of time of possession to catch up with them, and it just never did. And so just for the fact that it was unclaimed, I'll say, the defense was more impressive. Like I said last week that I was waiting for the linebackers to impress me, and they really impressed me this week. I was really glad to see it. Tim, I see you're unmuted, so take it away.
Yeah, for now. Someone had said the game thread is one of the reasons the defense struggling because of all the substitutions. And I think that had crossed my mind before. But is this maybe the first example where we saw all those substitutions really paid off? Because like Matt said, this team didn't really it looked like Army got more tired than we did as the game wore on. And you usually don't see that, especially versus a team like Army that runs that option. That's a very tiring thing to defend against. But our defense never really seemed to tuck her out. So is this finally the fruit of the rotating? I'm going to let you go because she's about to blow.
Oh, having kids.
You say that like any of us know what we're talking about. I'll be honest, I was thinking about Ball State volleyball and kind of missed the question. But I do think that this is an example where the substitutions helped.
No Olympic sports zone. We've been over this since week 1. The question was, someone said in the game thread that all the rotation we're doing on defense might be what's our problem.
I said that, and I still stand by it. We rotate players out all the time.
Please expand. And I'm thinking maybe this is them disproving you because
Maybe.
Army held that ball most of the game. The defense did pretty well.
Yeah. I just it was the Nevada game where I saw that we were rotating out the defensive line literally like every 3 plays, it seemed like. And I thought, that maybe that might be the problem because they can't gain any momentum. And it was kind of like the same thing where Jonathan Hawkins would have this, would start gaining, he would start catching fire, and then we would sub in Jordan Johnson. It doesn't make sense to me sometimes. But maybe that's maybe that's working for the defense. I would still say that it doesn't work for the offense in that regard, but I would love to be proven wrong.
I would say defense over offense, it works. I mean, defense, it keeps fresh legs out. Defense is tiring, especially against the triple option where it's going to be clock running, time going, and it's going to be you're out there for a long time because the clock's running. So I would say defense, yes. Offense, I would like to see them let their running backs get in the grooves. Hawkins, I think, was the better back, and I was excited when Hawkins was out there. So, I mean, just let them find their groove. Give it to the hot hand.
Yeah, we're gonna have to adapt when we see that Tim is muted here, and I'll just try to jump in as I'm able. I mean, I'll definitely be able. But we'll jump in and make it as seamless as possible. I tend to agree, at least on defense, that I don't mind frequent substitutions. The only position that I particularly mind them would be cornerbacks. I feel like good cornerback, it helps to be in a rhythm. Never played football, never, but it just feels to me like you can build on successes. You get a pass breakup, you cover a guy tight. A lot of good, that one-on-one battle there is getting in guys' heads. And I like that. And of course, that type of battle also happens in the trenches, but in the trenches, you might have more success based on scheme, whereas out in cornerback, you're one-on-one with the guy. And I feel like that could be a rhythm. But otherwise, I don't mind it as much, especially for something if in a good defensive system where people know their roles. If you can sub in a guy and they still know the role, I'm a little bit less concerned. I don't know, again, not a football coach or anything like that. I don't know to what extent people have roles or their guys, but it seems to me like a strong defense would be one where everyone knows their role and you could flip flop and just jump in. That said, on offense, I think it's incredibly important to get rhythm. I was frustrated last year when it felt like Anthony Taylor wasn't given enough carries to establish himself in a game, and then Jordan Johnson would get going, and then it'd feel like just as Jordan Johnson was becoming a threat, they'd throw Anthony Taylor again for 3 carries, and when you pull Anthony Taylor after 3 carries, there wasn't a rhythm for him. And I feel like similar things are happening this year with Johnson and Hawkins, and I don't know. I just feel like similar things are happening. I feel less strongly about it than I did middle linebackers last week and play calling last week, so I'll say less about it for now. I do think in the concept of getting into a rhythm outside of substitutions, another thing you can do to get in a rhythm is run high percentage plays. And I've talked about this a lot. We've talked about this section already, but I feel like UB did a much better job of running high percentage plays instead of home run plays this week.
Yeah.
I have not paid too much attention to substitutions outside of the skill players. I know that the defensive line must be coming in and out because I saw a bunch of different names. But, the offensive line, is there a chance that they're still gelling? Is there a chance that they're subbing somewhat more frequently? I got to be honest, I haven't been watching it.
I don't think the offensive line subbing as frequently as the defensive line. Lance said.
Honestly, we probably don't have the depth on the offensive line to be subbing.
Yeah, the DL has the depth to sub out. And Lance made a big point about that at Media Day, to where he's like, I feel confident that we could, have 8 guys in the rotation for the defensive line because we're that deep. But yeah, and it seemed to work out just fine, in that second half of the Army game. So.
Yeah. Then offensive line, I'm not a fan of constant subbing and stuff because you want them to build the camaraderie and stuff. Offensive line is the most team you want them to be on the same page and stuff. I'm fine bringing an extra tight end or something to block, but offensive line, I don't think you should be subbing if they are.
Yeah, the OL needs to figure out their penalty situation before we start subbing them out, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep.
Pull a BSF.
Maybe that penalty situation should be how we substitute. You've committed a dumb penalty.
Maybe.
You're going to come out and get yelled at while someone else comes in. Right? There you go. Problem solved.
I don't think we've said it enough how the penalty situation really stalls our offense.
It does.
Yeah.
It's one thing if actually penalties weren't that bad in the last game.
No, and I was about to say that. It is terrible how it stalls it, but even the last 2 games, it wasn't as bad against Nevada as I thought. Because I went to look it up for Q&A with BC Interruption, and it wasn't that bad.
Mm-hmm. I think the problem is what we're seeing is they almost always seem to be on the offensive line. So even when it's not that bad, that's 3-4 penalties against the offensive line. And and last year was a huge problem. I think whether or not you sub on the offensive line depends on the type of game you're playing, right? I mean, if you're trying to wear down the other team, you do take some wear yourself. So if your goal is just to literally go out there and hammer away and punish, I could see needing to sub more than if you're playing a less conservative, more passing game where the line's waiting for folks to come at them. But that's just my opinion. I'm obviously not a football coach because I would have put Brandon Berry in instead of Lacey Ross last week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's wrap up Army with player and play of the game. I'm going to start with Matt.
All right. Player of the game is Tyree Jackson, but not just for the fact that he's the quarterback and we won a game. And it should become evident why I think he's the player of the game once I pick out this very specific play that I want, and it might be 2 plays. But I'm kind of behind the 8 ball here because I didn't think about this as well as I could have. All right, 2 plays on the scoring drive that was the tying touchdown in the 4th quarter. Let's see. 4th and 9 at midfield, Tyree Jackson pass complete to Mason Schreck for 10 yards, the Army 40, first down UB. 3rd and 12 at the Army 27, Tyree Jackson pass complete to Mason Schreck for 19 yards, the Army 8, first down UB. 1st and goal at the Army 8, Tyree Jackson pass complete to Mason Schreck for 4 yards, the Army 4. I think my player of the game is Tyree. Of course, Tyree accounted for 3 touchdowns. Of course, he led 2 4th quarter scoring drives with multiple 4th down conversions, including 2 on that drive. But he's my player of the game. Even if everything was different and we had gotten 14 points from defense, and this was the only scoring drive he actually led. He's my player of the game for those 4th down throws to Schreck. That 10-yarder and that 19-yarder were threaded into eyes of needles. I believe the 19-yarder to Schreck, he was the only guy. He was surrounded by 4 Army defenders, and the pass was placed in a place where it's cliche, but legitimately where an Army defender could not make a play on the ball, and it was either Mason Schreck or nobody. This is a nitpicky thing compared to the troubles elsewhere on the team, but I would love to see Tyree compact his throwing motion down a little bit. I feel like he takes a long windup. But that said, if he's throwing balls on a rope like that through defenders, not just taking risks and fitting it in there, but actually throwing it where guys can't catch it, as he did on that 19-yarder, and not afraid to make the throw that he needs to make to convert that 9-yarder, which was a bit of a riskier throw, but getting it done. Those are exciting plays to me, and I'm thrilled to see Schreck finally get more involved in the offense as he should be. Those throws are always going to be available to Schreck and Tyree if Tyree's willing to throw it there. And so for those throws alone, let alone the poise, let alone the decision-making, the rushing touchdowns, for those 3 throws alone, Tyree Jackson's my player of the game.
All right. Kevin.
Not to kind of jump on the bandwagon, but I'm also going with Tyree Jackson. Just because
we discourage repeats here. So I'm going first. I'll let you get away with it.
If I had went first, I would have done it. But it's basically just because of how game I've seen out of him. I know there was a lot of worry after the Nevada game where he went 7-22, but I think a really different player when I was watching him out there. I mean, his deep ball accuracy, again, not caught, it was still there, and it was better. The Nevada game, a lot of the balls floated out of bounds. These ones were on the money, on the hands. He played with confidence. He didn't get frustrated. He didn't get emotional. He didn't show that he was a freshman and stuff. And I absolutely love that. I mean, I'm excited now to watch him even more. He ran the ball well. It was a complete game where he didn't get frustrated when they went down. He didn't give up. He fought, and he had that energy on the sideline too. So for that, I have to go and piggyback off Matt. Play of the game. I'm just going to go with the whole series, the 3 plays in overtime for the defense. I think the penalty helped. Yeah, I think it was a chop block or something.
Yep.
But just overall defense, the way they stepped up, they didn't let him go. They wrapped up, they tackled, and they didn't let him get away to push the field goal range farther back on an already struggling kicker. I'm going to go with that whole series. Those 3 plays were plays of the game that made it.
Yeah, that Cam Lewis. Oh, go ahead, finish up.
I'm just saying, they know they were in the kicker's head and stuff, and you could see that they weren't going to let him go. They wrapped up. It was fundamental tackling. Again, I've never played either, but I know a fundamental tackle, and the defense stepped up for it.
Yeah, that tackle by Cam Lewis on the sideline, I honestly can't remember if it was 2nd or 3rd down in that series, was one of the best it is the best open field tackle we've seen this season.
I'm trying to look it up. I have the replay up, so I'm looking for it.
Robbie.
I'm torn between Mason Shrek and Brandon Crawford as players of the game, but I think we're going to go with Brandon Crawford. Shrek did a very, very good job at helping out with the receiving end on the offense, and I think he deserves a little more credit. But Crawford had a very strong night at defensive end, and then he had a huge tackle for a loss when Army took a pitch, and I can't remember what part of the game it was, but it was huge for the momentum of the game. And I'd have to go with him for player of the game. But since everyone else took Tyree Jackson. For play of the game, I'd have to go with Kamadi Holsey's receiving touchdown.
That was a sweet catch.
It was a great catch, and compared to all the other deep throws that there were that didn't get caught, for him to land that one, that was huge for UB trying to make a comeback, and it really got the energy going on the team, I think, and it was nice to see. I think that's the play of the game.
All right, Robbie, I missed. Who was your player?
Brandon Crawford.
Oh, good. All right, I'm going to go with Mitchison because after missing that extra point, he could have gotten his head, and he was solid after that. And that was the difference, right? The difference was you saw, Army's field goal kicker who, what was it? They kept saying allegedly kicked a 66-yard field goal in high school that I heard.
Yeah, they said
in
that
high school practice.
In high school practice.
Yeah, I don't know. They must have just gotten it from interviews during the week.
Yeah, no, I don't want to poo-poo him too much because, it's got to be tough to be a freshman and come in the game like that. He did well enough for the first part of the game, but you saw the one miss really got in his head in overtime. He was way off in overtime. And, Mitchison could have had the same thing. He's only a sophomore, missed that extra point, came back real strong. And so I'm going to make the play of the game, the field goal that won it. So I suppose it's a little bit easier than copying Tyree Jackson. So I probably have the weakest, easiest choice this week. And that brings us to talking about Boston College. And I'm gonna lean into Matt really heavy here because Matt is the one of us who has any reason at all to know that Boston College exists as an entity. They've been dodging this game for what seems like a decade. But we're finally gonna play. Probably if we had played this when it was scheduled, Matt might have been at Boston College. It was
originally scheduled for Parents' Weekend my senior year.
Oh, okay.
So I'm particularly.
And how long have you been out of college?
It was originally scheduled for the first week of October or last week of September in 2011 was my senior year, fall. Oh. This is my fourth year out of college. My 5-year anniversary is next spring.
So Matt, teach us about Boston College here.
Teach you about Boston College football or Boston College in general? Oh, he's muted himself now.
Maybe a couple minutes on Boston College in general, and then go heavy on football because I really don't care about Boston College.
Okay. We won't go a couple minutes then. You'll be surprised at how long that would take. Boston College is among this class of, they were founding Big East University, Northeastern private school. They were one of the smarter founding Big East universities among those that wanted to keep football and got out of the Big East early, jumped to the ACC in that move that also took Virginia Tech and Miami to the ACC. Wow, I've chased Robbie away entirely. They had a great run under Tom Coughlin through the 90s, Tom O'Brien. Someone's going to watch this and yell at me for not knowing that. Had a nice run. They had the longest bowl winning streak in the nation for a while. Then Tom O'Brien left for NC State, saying that you just can't, Boston College is not a place where you can win more than 7 or 8 games a season. Which, of course, he then left as Matt Ryan, future top 5 pick, was stepping into a role as a starting quarterback. And they had a couple of real big years there under Matt Ryan, advanced to 2 straight ACC championship games, the second of which was my freshman year there. Matt Ryan's junior year was the year that Buffalo played them last in an absolute hurricane of a game that Ryan sat out. That game is probably... It's almost certainly the record for the most rain falling in any UB game. recent years, they made a bad decision in a coaching hire while I was there. Their current coach, Steve Adazio, is a former Temple guy, former Florida coordinator. He did a tremendous job early in his career of adapting to his personnel. You'll remember a few years ago that running back Andre Williams was a Heisman finalist. Andre Williams was the offense that year. They would put out one wide receiver and otherwise load up everybody in the box. He would have sixth and seventh offensive linemen line up as fullbacks and report as eligible so that they could lead block for Andre Williams. And they ran him to 2,000 yards that year, and that was an exciting season. Since then, he's failed to recruit a little bit. He's struggled to continue to adapt to the talent that he has, even though he's the one bringing it in now. And they've generally fallen into a period of really terrible offense with good to great defense. Last year was a great defense, but their defensive coordinator, Don Brown, left for Michigan, who can pay more. And this year the defense is still great, but it is not absolute best defense in the FBS like it was last year. I'm going to pull the old guy card for a minute. I think that Boston College, matchup-wise, presents a very similar situation to UConn in the International Bowl. I fear that there will be a size difference. I'm almost certain there will be a size difference in the trenches, if not a strength difference for sure. And UB might be just as well coached. They might execute just as well and might just get pushed around by a larger team as they did against UConn. I also think that in general, Boston College's strengths and weaknesses line up very favorably against UB for Boston College. Boston College's defense has always been built on being strong run stoppers. And their ability against the pass is dependent on who they have to drop into coverage. If their strong safety is a center fielder, if they've got a linebacker who can alternatively drop into coverage and mask their looks a bit. That's been the case for 5 or 6 defensive coordinators now. UB is going to have trouble running the ball. That's just a fact. Even if Jordan Johnson plays the best game he's ever had, UB is going to have trouble running the ball. And that, to me, is a recipe for trouble with a redshirt freshman quarterback, even one who's shown a lot of poise and strong decision-making. Offensively, Boston College is a very run-heavy team, not as much as in the Andre Williams years, but they're very run-heavy. They'll pass when they need to, and they'll find Patrick Towles is a grad transfer who worked out for them from Kentucky. He will pass when he needs to, and he'll make completions when he needs to. They will run the ball, and they'll be able to run the ball effectively. If UB can block up the middle and isn't giving up too much physically in the trenches and win their front seven, and they can block up the middle like Army, I think they could slow things down. BC similarly suffers from some strange play calling. Their current offensive coordinator was at Virginia Tech during the Logan Thomas years and makes confusing decisions. But running back John Hilleman is 6'2", 230, 240, and is going to really punish the front seven beyond whatever the offensive line does. And my fear for the UB defense is that I don't think they've shown much of an ability to get into the backfield yet. I looked this up for a Q&A with BC Interruption, who's the SB Nation blog for the Eagles. Army, of course, is running the ball 90% of the time this season. But Albany is running the ball 72% of the time, and Nevada something like 68% of the time. So we have gone against particularly run-heavy teams, heavy enough that passing downs are somewhat predictable, and we've still had trouble getting to the backfield. And I think that Patrick Towles is not a great quarterback. He's not a quarterback that can win a game if he's forced to. But if UB doesn't get pressure and the threat of a run is there and they have to devote 7 guys to the box consistently, 8 guys to the box consistently, there's going to be time for Towles to find short and intermediate routes. And I'm a little worried about that from a Buffalo standpoint. I think the biggest thing is we're going to see what kind of size is difference. I think that BC has significant scheme issues. Virginia Tech laid a whooping on them. But I'm not sure, much like I said about Nevada and Notre Dame prior to our game against the Wolfpack, I'm not sure that the things that Virginia Tech did to beat Boston College were because of mistakes that UB can capitalize on, or if they were based on windows and opportunities that might not be available to a team that's a little bit slower and a little bit smaller and doesn't have ACC caliber athletes. It is not an intimidating road environment. Alumni Stadium holds 45,000 people. It is Parents Weekend, but it's also Buffalo. I mentioned last week I got a ticket on StubHub for $4.25. I would not expect it to be a very intimidating road environment, and I don't think BC's been particularly good at home compared to their road lately. So that's in UB's favor. I don't have much else to say right now. Tim's still muted. I'm not entirely sure where we want to go with this. I don't know if you guys have done any research or interested in anything, and maybe I can offer.
Based on what Matt's saying, what does UB have to do to pull the upset here? Because let's face it, if UB manages an upset here, it comes out of conference at 2-2. This is a completely different narrative going into the season than it was after Nevada. Right after Nevada, we were all preparing for the apocalypse, and we're not out of the woods yet. But let's say UB does it, and I think Boston College is one of the beatable P5 teams out there. Like Matt said, they have an astounding defense. But if you can manage to do some points, I mean, it's not like playing Alabama or Ohio State or Michigan.
Yeah, this could be a winnable game at 17-14 at 2017. It could be.
Make this a winnable game, Matt, and all the guys based on what Matt said.
Why don't you go to one of them first?
Kevin, what do you think?
Going off what Matt said, I'm gonna say the key is to keep it low scoring. Their defense is good. I mean, I do know it is the 6th in the country. That's about the extent I know about Boston College. But I think it's going to have to be low scoring, and it's going to be up one of those grinded out, tough games that our defense is going to need to show up and prove that a defense will win a game. Robbie?
This is tough for me. I think the biggest thing I want to see is I want the offensive line to be able to hold their own with their defensive line. Up until this point, I think that they're going to struggle in that regard, and that's very crucial for starting a run game. And the last thing I want, win or lose, is for us to abandon the run game. And if we abandon the run game, that could carry over the rest of the season with what we've seen from Andy Kolomicki so far. And I honestly really don't care about winning or losing this game because I really just want to keep seeing that balanced offense. It's very winnable in my opinion. And like you said, Kevin, it's all about putting some points on the board. And, if we can establish some kind of a running game, I feel like we can do it.
Yeah, I think both of those are – oh, you're not done.
No, I'm
okay.
just not done.
I think both of those are great points. I have a few that I think are key. I mentioned it. I haven't seen anything yet that they can do it, but maybe it's still out there. If UB can get into the backfield, that changes the game. Mm-hmm. If UB can get into the backfield into a way, if they can force BC into passing downs, that changes the game. If they can just get into the backfield and disrupt their offensive rhythm, that changes the game. I'm not certain that can happen. This is perhaps something for a broader conversation to keep in touch with over the course of the season, but I'm wary of Tyree Jackson trying to do everything himself. It's just not a way that I want the offense to run. That said, the offensive drives that were successful against Army were the ones where he did the most. So I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. Against Boston College, that will be a bad idea. That will be a bad idea if he tries to do everything himself. I think that Mason Schreck is someone who has the size to be a force in the offense, even against BC's linebackers. And, whatever multiple looks they'll give on defense. I'd love to see Schreck involved to a similar degree as he was in the second half against Army. I'd love to see UB can stay with the run game perhaps longer than they think they should. If they can get 3 and 4 yards somewhat consistently in the first half, I'm okay with going back to it and maybe that turning into 5 yards in the second half. They don't need to light the world on fire with the run game for the run game to be useful. Because BC's defense has been prone to brain farts this year in a way that they weren't when Don Brown was the coordinator last year. It's still structurally a very similar defense, but they gave up a 55-yard quarterback sneak touchdown against FCS Wagner last week on just kind of a broken play. So keep the offense variable, even if it feels like it's time to abandon the run, even if it feels like the run is not going to work, but as an option. But use it to keep the options available to you, and use it to give run looks that can turn into passes and things like that. I hope that UB won't get locked into passing, and I hope that UB won't get locked into Tyree Jackson trying to do it all. That said, Tim's asking for us to go to shoutouts, but we need to do brew peg, so hopefully we can do that quickly.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Let's do that.
All right. Let's do it quickly, Robbie.
Okay. I'm going to go with Buffalo 20, Boston College 17. I'm going to pick the upset. And I think Adam Money Mitchison's going to get a game-winning field goal. That's my prediction.
Okay. Kevin?
I put it in at UB 27, Boston College 17. I'll probably end up. I kind of worry about that, but I'm going to be relentlessly optimistic because we're on a winning streak. So I'm going to go with that.
All right. I thought about posting this week the clip from Major League where he talks about the coach comes in and says, "We won today. If we do that again tomorrow, that's another one. If we do it the next day, that's called a winning streak." My preseason prediction was 27-3. Boston College, mostly in favor of how dominant their defense was last year. I do think that their defense has looked more susceptible this year. As I mentioned, they gave up that big play to Wagner. They gave up a couple touchdowns to UMass. They gave up 49 to Virginia Tech. So I'm ready to bump UB's offensive output up a bit. I'm not able to discount what I think will be some pretty hefty physical advantages in the trenches for the Eagles. I will say that there will be a missed kick in this game. BC's troubles the last couple of years are almost as bad as UB's, if not worse, maybe worse. You might remember that they lost the Pinstripe Bowl a couple of years ago, basically because they kicked like between their extra points and field goals, they had like a 50% success rate a couple of years ago. So someone's going to miss a kick, and we might as well give it to BC. So I've got Boston College 29, Buffalo 10. I could see UB scoring more, but I'm going to go with 10. Tim, are you able to?
Yeah, you have to hear over the cries. I'm going to give Matt a pass on this. I was going to give him a hard time for being the one guy that's going to pick our opponent, but again, I'm going to let him play his alum card, and the fact he's fallen behind card. So
I will say this: BC has done a lot to not welcome me in as an alumnus. They've done a lot to not win my loyalty back as a guy who was the first student into every basketball game for 4 years. They have done a lot to not care whether I support them or not. I just think they're the better team.
All right, so thanks for taking all the humor out of that, Captain Bull.
Sorry. I deserve that.
All right, so Kevin stole my pick. I was actually going to pick that score, but instead I'll go UB 24, Boston College 17. And I'd like to say, please don't give our kickers nicknames. That's worked out poorly for us in the past.
I forgot who said that. Who gave him that nickname?
I think it was Conrad. We started
Conrad?
calling
MVP.
It was
Patrick Clark.
We started calling Clark because he was amazing.
Well, somebody called Mitchison Money.
Mitchison's own Twitter handle is Money Mitch.
All right, well, we're calling him Money Mitch.
Okay, all right. So if he gave it to himself, then there we go.
That's fine.
Okay, now let's go to shout-outs. I'm going to shout out to a very tired little girl here who is teething and not feeling well and enduring this show. And I'm going to hand it off to you guys and mute myself again for the good of everyone.
Who wants to go?
Evan does.
Two buttons.
Okay,
Buttons are confusing.
I kind of have like two. The first off is to just the UB students this season. The game against Army, there was no reason why we should have had as big of a crowd as we did, but we did. People came back even for the Albany loss. They were loud. They were energetic. They gave us those like thunder sticks, and everyone was having fun with those. And better atmospheres I've ever been a part of. And the students are just coming out to events this year. Friday night there was a club hockey game, and there are probably 75 to 100 students there. So coming out, so I'm just really happy. Another quick shout out to the 3 or 5 people last night that painted the bowl. There's a new thing at UB where every night bowl, and you try and it's like a competition. Whoever has it up by sunrise, you can't work on it anymore, and it's your bowl for the day. So True Blue last night from midnight to 2 a.m. painted this bowl with all of our logos and stuff. So shout out to those people who took sleep deprivation to get a little school pride out there.
All right. My shout out will be, I'm sure people who are actually watching this know from the comment section and such that I'll be in Boston this weekend. I am flying up Friday night. I'll visit some college friends, watch the game with them, visit there. But I'm also excited. It's going to cause for a very busy Saturday, at least up until the game ends, of running around Alumni Stadium and the not very good tailgating at Boston College, because there's a good chunk of UB fans going, and it's not a terrible trip, but it is a sneaky 6.5, 7 hours. I'm looking forward to meeting some folks who I've only met once or twice, or only know online. I know CT Bowles fan will be there. I know RMA will be there. I met him once before. Conrad will be there. I've never met him in person before. It's good to see. Tim talked last week about taking advantage of things like this. And it's good to see, and I'm excited to run around my old campus, see how it's changed. And I'm just glad that I'm glad to be busy this weekend. So shout out going to the UB fans who are going up to support, in Boston. Robbie.
Okay. Well, first I want to piggyback on Kevin, and the student support has been great. I absolutely love it. I was in Denver, Colorado this weekend, so I was watching the game from a Starbucks. And it was great to hear how loud the crowd was in overtime. I had thought most people had left by that point. And surprisingly, there were still a ton of students left in the stands. And that is awesome, and that just needs to keep, that's just what school pride is all about. My first shout-out is kind of unserious. So I got to thank 4:30 p.m. Robbie for taking a nap, because now I'm probably not going to be able to sleep tonight. Took like a 5-hour nap, and that was awful. But my real actual shout out was while I was in Denver, there was these 2 homeless guys sitting on a bench at probably like 10 p.m. at night. And they weren't asking for money or anything. The only thing they wanted was people to smile at them when they walked by. They asked for a smile, and it made everyone laugh and stuff. And it's a wonderful thing. And kudos to them for having a really positive outlook despite being homeless and stuff. And I just thought that was really cool.
All right, we're going back to Tim. He's got one more, then I think he's going to close us out.
Yeah, I got one more. And it's actually, those of you who've been reading the blog for we have a commenter named BSF who, look, I'm going to be brutally honest here. He can be a pain at times.
In my opinion.
But I never doubt his sincerity, which is something that I don't say with any light amount of appreciation for. He's always pretty sincere in what he says. He made a great, and this is also piggybacking on what Robbie and Kevin said. He made a great point at a lot of the people who were poo-pooing UB at being an FBS team right after the game. He said, this is why you're in the FBS. You play teams like Army. You play wonderful overtime games that a lot of people remember being at. In 10 years, those students who were there at that game will remember being there. You talk to people who were at the game when Naaman Roosevelt caught the Hail Mary in 2008. They all remember being there. So a shout-out to the students who were there. And those of you who weren't there realize that's why you go every week, because every week you get to see something you can see potentially something like that. And it's against a team like Army, not a team like, I don't know, pick random FCS team. So, it was BSF's, I think, best comment ever on Bull Run. I think it got wrecked 7, 8, or 9 times. And like I said, I respect his sincerity, and we finally kind of align on this one thing. So thank you for sticking through all the times we've told you stop posting stuff that's too long and being a part of the community.
Your 1,500-word essays.
Yeah,
But,
that one post made a lot of those essays worth it. I'm just going to say that.
yeah. Just to go off what you just said, Tim, it's a big deal. A lot of these kids are going to still remember this Army game, for many years. And that's what about coming out to these games and being a part of True Blue is all about. It's
and they
all
look
about the
fantastic on TV. They didn't just sound great; they looked great. Like
Yeah.
Kevin mentioned the Thunder Sticks, and I think this season True Blue and the students, even though it's been a really rough start to the year, they're doing better than I've seen in years. In years of following this program, I've never seen the student section and heard the student section from Minnesota be quite as loud and as energetic as they've been. And I think that's building a great foundation for this program for the years to come.
Yeah. It's just, even if the team's losing, I come to these games not because I want. It's not because of if the team's having success or not. It's because it's a lot of fun to just go crazy and show school pride for a couple hours, and you end up remembering a lot of times you hang out with friends the entire time, and some of my best friends now I've met at UB games of some sort, and it's wonderful to have, and it's all about showing school pride. Even if we're losing, we could go 1-11, for the rest of the season. I'll still be at every home game.
Oh, well, I can't close this out, Tim. You've got to.
No, I'm going to. Sorry, I'm actually left-handed. I'm actually left-handed, so right now it's a bit difficult maneuvering everything you got to maneuver. So hey, for Kevin and Robbie and Matt and myself, thank you guys. Thanks for people who have been viewing. Thank you for watching this later. If you watch it later, be sure to tune in next week and go Bulls.